that in a bit. But I want to welcome you to a very special seminar, and kudos to all of you who are brave enough to overcome your fears and hesitation to talk about a subject that we don't like to talk about. But the truth is, every one of us has been faced with or will be faced with death and dying. It's inevitable, okay? See, what's even more tragic than the loss of a loved one is all the added grief and trauma of wading through all the paperwork and the confusion and the preparations and all that. It just adds to the grief. And so that's what this seminar is about. It's to help you prepare as much as possible for the inevitable. So we're going to hear from 6 different experts in the field today. And you can take a look at your schedule in the bulletin, in the booklet there, and get an idea. And after every speaker, there's going to be a time for question and answer. If you have any questions, we've got a roving mic because we have some folks on Zoom. And I believe we're going to put this on YouTube as well. So if you have any questions, by all means, there will be opportunity for that. And then at the end of our sessions, we're going to have an open forum just to allow you to share maybe some of your experiences. This is really what helped me when I went through it with a loved one. Or boy, I wish somebody would have explained this part to me. Just a short open forum, and then we get lunch to boot. So it's going to be a great seminar today. For those of you who are on Zoom, if you have any questions, you can use your chat thing and send us comments, and Luke in the back will make sure and get those to us as well. So in your booklet, you're going to find the schedule there. There's some blank paper on the left that you can take as many notes as you want. There's also a funeral planning sheet, a sample will to live, I'll explain that in a little bit, and an evaluation form, because we want to see how we're doing and if we can keep doing this better. And we'll explain this later. I want to let you know, too, this is not a sales pitch, okay? You've probably gotten those things in the mail, you know. It's not a sales pitch, it's an informational seminar. However, if you'd like to pursue anything further with any of the speakers, by all means, you can do that. I believe they will leave some business cards, information, and you can certainly reach out to them as you feel led. Just as a reminder, too, nobody's getting paid today, okay? None of the speakers are paid, so if you feel like you want to follow up with them, by all means, you can do that. Also, just last but not least, most all of you have probably already received some, but there are 2 books in the back that may help. You're welcome to take them. They're free. If you care to make a donation, you can just put whatever amount you want in that little offering box back there, but otherwise those books are free, and you can use them as needed as well. So that's all the logistics details. How about we pray and we'll get started. Good morning, Father. Thank you for life. Thank you for bringing us here to talk about this necessary issue. Thank you, God, for your presence here. Thank you for the hope that we have that goes far beyond the grave. I pray that you would be glorified in our time today, that you would speak to us. Help us, Lord, to prepare for the inevitable. Help us to see it from your perspective, and to be good stewards of all that you've given to us. God, we thank you for what you're going to do here, and we pray that you would be glorified in our time. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Okay, well, I'd like to begin, first of all, by taking a look at death and dying from a spiritual perspective. And to do that, I want to take you back to the time when you first got engaged to be married. And those of you who may not have been engaged, you can dream, okay? Now, that was an exciting time, wasn't it? It's like, woo, the butterflies and all that. You put the date on the calendar when you're getting married. You couldn't wait, right? Now, again, I know this is a seminar on death and dying and not on marriage, but some people think it's pretty much the same. But anyway, we got excited about looking forward to that wedding day. Well, if you're a follower of Christ, guess what? You're the bride of Christ. And someday our bridegroom is coming. Or we're going to go to him, and we're going to be with him forever. It's our wedding day. For the death of a believer is our wedding day. So why are we not planning for that exciting day? Instead, what we do is we don't talk about it, we avoid it, we try to prolong death as long as we can, hoping it doesn't come. Well, guess what, folks? The mortality rate still stands at 100%. You know, if Jesus doesn't come, we're all going to die. So we need to plan, we need to get excited about our wedding day. In fact, the most important thing we can do is to prepare spiritually for death. So, what does the Bible say about death and dying? Well, in a nutshell, death was introduced back in the Garden of Eden, right? God initially created this perfect world. Everything was very good. There was no death. There was no suffering. And God told Adam and Eve, he said, don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because he didn't want them to experience evil. He says, don't eat from that tree or you will die. Well, guess what? They ate from the tree, and immediately they were separated from God. They were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, separated from God. And that really is the definition of death. Death is separation. And there's a spiritual death and a physical death. Spiritual death, we're now separated from God, from the God who created us. And then eventually there will be physical death, where we will die physically. Our spirit will be separated from our body. And the only way that we can reverse that, if you will, the only way that we can overcome spiritual death is to get someone to take the rap for us. The penalty for our sin is death, physical and spiritual death. The only way we can avoid spiritual death is to get someone to take the rap for us. Well, who could do that? Yes, that's why Jesus came, isn't it? Jesus came to offer us a plea deal. We were all on death row. We deserved to die and be separated. Jesus came and says, I'm willing to take your place. I'm willing to die in your place, take the rap for you. Here's the deal. I want you to trust and follow me. That's that, okay? And so everyone who takes that plea deal can now overcome spiritual death and will be with the Lord forever. These bodies are still going to die because these bodies have been corrupted. There's no fixing them, folks. We can prolong it, but there's no fixing them forever. But our spirit can be with the Lord forever. We can be reconciled if we simply trust and follow Jesus. Jesus says in Luke 13:3, unless you repent, you will all perish. Paul says in Acts 16:30, believe in the Lord Jesus and you will be saved. Saved from what? Saved from spiritual death. Okay, so that's why, as followers of Christ, we need to be excited about our upcoming wedding day. We should be excited about it. We get to be with Jesus forever, amen? That's not something to dread or fear. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean we get to speed up that day. Okay, when you circled the wedding date on the calendar, you couldn't speed it up. You had to wait for it, right? I am not advocating suicide. And for the record, let me just say a little bit about that. Suicide is a terrible sin against God because we are created in his image. We are precious. Life is precious. And we need to do everything we can to preserve life because it's precious to God. It is not our call when to die. We don't get to say when we die. That's God's call. Now, let me also say that while committing suicide is a terrible sin, committing suicide alone will not send you to hell. You may have heard that. What sends people to hell is rejecting Jesus' plea deal. Not trusting and following him with all your heart. That's what sends us to hell. Now, suicide is, however, the only sin that you can never repent from because it's too late. So It's a terrible sin, and yet that's not what it doesn't send us automatically to hell. Now, that leads me to another similar dilemma that we're often faced with, and I want to just share a spiritual answer to when do we pull the plug? We talk about that a lot too. You get a loved one that, when do we remove life support? Well, again, we need to understand it's not our call to determine whether someone should live or die. Okay, that's God's call. We can't play God. What's more is I've heard more and more lately doctors talking about quality of life. And maybe you've heard this. Oh, well, their quality of life will never be what it was. So maybe we need to think about terminating. Well, my quality of life isn't what it was 20 years ago. I hope you're not going to pull the plug on me today. So we have to be careful about that quality of life. So again, how do we decide then when it's time to pull the plug? Well, from a biblical standpoint, the best thing I can tell you is there's a fine line between extending life, which is precious, and extending death, which is inevitable. So if we are extending life, we need to do everything we can to do that. But if the loved one is clearly dying, if God is calling them home, then get out of the way and let God do what God is planning to do. And I realize that that's a tough line, but that's the best thing I think biblically. If we're not dying, or if they're not dying, we don't have the right to take their life, and we need to choose life. But if God is calling them home, if they're in the process of dying, then we need to let God's will be done. Now, I know that nobody wants to live on a ventilator. We hear that a lot too. Oh, I don't want to be on a ventilator. Okay, fine, I get that. I wouldn't want to be on a ventilator either. I wouldn't want to have an organ transplant. I wouldn't want to live without an arm or a leg. I wouldn't want to have a stroke. There's a lot of things we don't want, but again, the question is, are we prolonging life or prolonging death? And think about this too. How is a ventilator different from a pacemaker, an organ transplant, medications? Those are all things that keep us alive. Now, granted, the ventilator is more invasive, but do we have the right to decide, well, that's too invasive, so I'm going to just stop? We have to be very careful with that. So all that to say, what we really need to do is pray hard and say, God, what do you want to do? Pray for his will and not ours. One thing that I've discovered that helps in this regard, helps my loved ones to decide for me, is what I call, well, I don't call it, it's called a will to live, and you'll see that in your packet. This comes from Focus on the Family, and you can go on their website, focusonthefamily.org, and get a copy. Basically what it does is this. It spells out whether I am living or dying. If doctors determine that I am in fact dying, that I have a month to live or 3 months to live, this is what they can and cannot do. And it spells out specifically what that does. It's different than your typical living will. A lot of living wills basically say, don't put me on a ventilator, discontinue all the food and water and all that stuff. And again, it's a difficult line. But this is just one example, one sample that you can take a look at and see if this would work for you or not. So enough of that subject. Again, we pray hard to see whether God is extending life or death. Another topic that's brought up from a spiritual standpoint is cremation. Is cremation okay from a biblical standpoint? Well, in Numbers and in 2 Kings, we see that God burned up several people as a form of divine judgment. He toasted them, okay? Pagans in the Old Testament would burn their children alive as a sacrifice to the gods. Okay, obviously we don't want to do that. However, in 1 Samuel 31, we see that valiant men cremated King Saul's body as an act of honor. In Amos chapter 6, it implies that cremation was a normal practice. It was done a lot. Okay, so what is the answer for us? Personally, okay, Scriptures does not very clearly say you must not or it's okay. Personally, I don't see anything in Scripture that condemns cremation. I mean, we're certainly not offering them to the gods when we do that. However, this is ultimately a matter between you and God. If you do not feel comfortable, then don't go against your conscience, okay? Don't go against your conscience. So you need to pray hard and act on your conscience with regard to cremation. One other thing I want to talk about that helps tremendously from a spiritual standpoint is having a memorial service. And we're going to hear more about that a little bit later. And I hear people say, oh, well, they didn't visit me when I'm alive. They're not going to visit me when I'm dead. I'm not going to have any service. I would disagree with that because life is precious. And it's important to honor anybody. It's important to have a service to honor them. It not only celebrates life, it brings closure to all the loved ones and family. It's an opportunity for family to come together, and we need that. So I really recommend that everyone has a memorial service. In fact, for a believer in Christ, I urge you to consider having a church service, a worship service to celebrate the God of life. Along with that, too, let me also put a plug in for the fellowship meal afterwards. I have found that the fellowship meals afterwards are just as important as the memorial service because it is such a stressful time. You're planning, you're arranging, you're going back and forth, and you're finding papers. You're so stressed. And after the service is the time where you can just sit down and breathe and relax and enjoy family because some of those family members you won't see again for a while, probably till the next person dies. And so it's really important to have some sort of a gathering and a fellowship meal afterwards as well. Psalm 116, verse 15 says, "Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints." It's a precious thing. See, God knows what it's like to lose a loved one. He does. He watches his creation die every day. He watched his son die for us. He knows what we're going through. He can relate to what we're going through. He is the God of all comfort who comforts us so we can comfort others. And more than that, Jesus died, but he rose again. He is fully alive to give us hope. Hope that goes beyond the grave. Okay? Hope that helps us to celebrate life and celebrate our delivery into glory. Let me just share one illustration with you. You may have heard this before, but I found this to be very powerful. There was an older woman who was dying, and she called her pastor in to talk to her, and she wanted to plan her funeral, which is a great thing. And they were talking about, these are some scripture verses I want and some songs I want sung, and this is kind of the message I want you to bring. And she says, one thing too, she said, when you're viewing me in the casket, I want you to put a fork in my hand. And the pastor said, what? What on earth? Why would you want a fork in your hand? She said, do you remember all those meals we used to have as a church? And we'd have all these delicious meals, and then they'd come by and they'd collect all your plates and silverware, and they'd clean up. And every now and then they would say, keep your fork. Keep your fork. She says, when they told me that, I knew the good stuff was coming. It wasn't going to be just pudding or jello. It was cake or pie. It was the good stuff. I knew the best was yet to come. So when people view me in the casket, and when they see that fork there, I want you to tell them the best is yet to come. Wow. For the believer, that is so true, isn't it? That is so true. I want to tell you, I have done funerals where they had a fork in their hand. And it's a beautiful illustration. And now that leads me to the most important question that we will ever answer. Where will you spend forever? Where will you spend eternity? Because death is very much like giving birth. It's delivery. And we're going to be delivered either into glory or into hell. So when you die, will you be with God in heaven or without God in hell? That's the choice we make. Is your best yet to come? So with that, any questions at all? From a biblical standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, we have a mic we can share along if anybody has any questions or anything.
What was your reference in 1 Samuel?
1 Samuel is chapter 31, verse 12. Yep, 1 Samuel 31, verse 12. And then Amos 6, I don't have the exact verse there, but in Amos 6, it references people who go around and burn the bodies. So. Yeah.
I think sometimes we put too much stock in this body.
This is blue one.
I think sometimes we put too much stock in this body. God created our spirit and soul, but he needed something to put that spirit and soul in to traverse this earth. Mm-hmm. And he gave us this body for the purpose of sharing the gospel to lead others to Christ. But then at some point in time, he's calling this soul and this spirit back to him. Yep. And this body is just earth to earth, ashes, dust to dust. Yep. It doesn't mean anything.
It's a temporary earth suit, somebody said.
Right, exactly.
Yep, that's true. Any other questions? Maybe I can also just share one little illustration too in the couple of minutes I have here. I talked very briefly about for the believer, dying is very much like giving birth. And I love this illustration. We see some hints of this in Scripture too. When a baby is in the womb, that baby is content, life is good, everything is going well, but that baby has no idea what's coming. And it is helpless to stop the inevitable events. We know that life in the womb is just a very temporary thing. We know that life is so much better here for us than in the womb. And think about it too. A woman who's pregnant goes through all sorts of emotions and struggles and all of that, the hormones and everything. And the closer it gets to birth, the more those emotions come. For a believer, it's the same thing. We get closer to death, the emotions of what's going to happen, am I dying, and all that. But see, when a baby is born, all of the pain is forgotten, right? That mom and dad are beaming with pride, can't wait to show this baby a whole new world. For the believer in Christ, when we die, we are delivered into a whole new world that we can't even comprehend. And our heavenly dad, our heavenly Father, is beaming with pride and can't wait to show us a brand new world. That's what we look forward to, folks. That's what we look forward to. So, any other questions? All right, then I believe we will move right along. Our next speaker is Kathy Paul, and Kathy is a hospice nurse with WellSpan Evangelical Hospital, and she's going to come and speak on the medical preparation and hospice care and what we might expect if we are faced with that situation. So, Kathy, would you come on up? Good morning. There's a bottle of water there if you need it too. Hopefully that's,
Boy, a microphone and everything. All right. Well, let me just say that that was the most beautiful introduction to the topic we're going to talk about. Usually when I go to speak to an audience of people, the reception or the talk of death or the end of life is very doom and gloom. So it was nice to hear that spin on what we do. So as he said, my name is Kathy. I am a hospice nurse. I've been a hospice nurse for 14 years now, and I manage the office in Lewisburg. So thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing the opportunity to talk about what it is that we do and how important it is. Hospice, as I mentioned, isn't something that people think about and have necessarily good feelings about. And from my personal standpoint, I am a believer, and I do believe that death is going to release us from our constraints here. But unfortunately, many people don't want to talk about death. They don't want to prepare for death, and they believe that they're immortal. So what hospice actually is it is a service that's available to anybody, regardless if you have an insurance plan, if you don't have an insurance plan. Many of the local hospitals or hospice programs will provide care even for those who are uninsured or underinsured. Most of the time, the individuals that are coming to us, they should have a terminal diagnosis that, based on their physician's experience with that particular diagnosis, would lead them to believe that they have a life expectancy of 6 months or less. What I will say about that is we are all human, and even though we have experience, we ultimately know who's in control, and it's not us. So sometimes that 6 months can turn into a year. You know, we currently have someone right now who's been with us for 2 years. We also have individuals who might come to us out of the hospital, and maybe they're only given a couple of weeks, but they get back in their home environment, they're cared for by individuals that love them, and they prosper and they do okay, and we actually have to discharge them from services. What I'd like to really kind of hone in today on is that hospice is not about when somebody is what we call actively dying, or in those last, what most people think, 2 or 3 days of life. Hospice is really meant to be a service that you're planning for, so that we can help build a relationship not only with the patient but with the family, so that we can support the patient and the family along the grief journey, because well before we pass, our families are already grieving us. We are already grieving the loss of our health, the loss of our independence. In some situations, people are grieving because it's a financial burden for their loved one to stay home from work to care for them. Many just different factors and elements of grief go along with that. So our hope is that we can spread the word about the service that's available to people, and that people become more accepting of utilizing it. So as I said, it is a service that is covered by, I've not ever come across an insurance that doesn't cover it. And there typically is no out-of-pocket cost for it. You are not charged for a nurse visit, a social work visit, anything. Any of the medications, any of the medical equipment that you might need during that time, all covered under your hospice benefit for your insurance. And what hospice is meant to do is we have a team of individuals. So it's not just nurses, it's also a social worker, it's also hospice aides, it's also, we have volunteers who come and assist with like providing respite for family members. Because if you have, for example, a husband who's being cared for by his wife, the wife still needs to be free to go take care of her own health, to be able to mow the lawn, get the oil changed, those sorts of things. So we're really about supporting the individual and the family as a unit throughout the entire process. Social work comes in not to, as many people think, they come in to be nosy about what's going on in your life, and that's not really the instance. What we're looking to try to do is help identify some of those stressful things like financial barriers. Are there food insecurities? Are you concerned about paying your bills? There's many ways that we can assist with that and get people help, with the goal of trying to reduce that stress at end of life. The aides that we have can come in and they can help with personal care. So if someone maybe is bedridden, they can provide an entire bed bath in the bed without ever getting the person up, change their sheets. And again, that's a support to the family member. So the family member isn't having to do that 100% of the time. What I will say is that a lot of people think that hospice is a 24/7 in the home service, and unfortunately that is not correct. But how we manage how we're caring for people is based on what's going on with the individual at the time. The more symptoms or issues that an individual has, the more frequently we're in the home. If someone is relatively stable and not having a lot of pain or shortness of breath, we may only be in the home once or twice a week, and that varies from week to week depending on what's going on with the person. We also have a chaplain that helps to support those individuals who maybe have not gotten to their church, maybe their pastor isn't visiting, that sort of thing. So again, it's really about the whole family unit and taking care of every piece, social, emotional, physical, all of that. So when we talk about terminal diagnosis, people oftentimes think of cancer. And I think that they think that cancer is the reason that people go on hospice. But contrary to that, cancer is one of the fewest reasons that people come onto our service. What we are seeing more of is congestive heart failure, COPD, which is a lung disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's disease. As people get into the end stages of those diseases, that's actually considered something that's terminal too. So I just kind of wanted to focus on switching that thought process that it's all cancer patients. It's really not. We have individuals who might have ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. Sometimes it's just, random diseases that we hardly ever hear of. So the key really to hospice services is recognizing where you're at in your journey and also getting your information and choosing the fit that's right for you. What I mean by that is that, and I'm not here to market WellSpan Hospice because I firmly believe in all of the hospices that are in the area, but people are looking for different things. So there are many different ways that you can research that information just like you would research for a physician. There's a Medicare site that you can go to and compare the hospices in your area. So just because your doctor might say to you, you're a Geisinger individual, you've gone to Geisinger forever, that doesn't mean that you have to choose Geisinger at end of life. The choice is actually yours. So most providers will put that out to you and say, you have the right to choose, and then you can do the research and see kind of what the variables are with the different programs that are around. But we do have several programs in the area, if you're not aware. WellSpan has one, Geisinger has one, Residential has one. There is one in Williamsport, as well as Williamsport also, the UPMC also has, it's called the Gatehouse. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they're one of the only organizations in the area that has what we call an inpatient hospice unit. So there's different levels of care with hospice. I'm not going to go into those because it'll just kind of confuse you, but as a nurse, when we're in the home, we're trying to manage whatever symptoms people are having so that we can make them the most comfortable. Sometimes we get to a point where we're not able to do that with the medications and the things that we have in the home. So we need to move that individual from their home either into the hospital so that we can work with a hospitalist to get them comfortable, or if they're very near end of life, they might go someplace like the Gatehouse in Williamsport, where they would actually go there, their symptoms would be managed, and then they would stay there likely until they passed. So the goal is to keep people in the home, but depending on what's going on with the individual, sometimes they need to have that inpatient care. So the Gatehouse in Williamsport is an inpatient thing that's organization that's staffed by hospice nurses and hospice doctors. And then I believe it was last year they opened up, I can never remember the name of it, I'm sorry. It has a beautiful name and I can't remember the name of it, but it's over at Maria Joseph Manor over by Danville. They have an entire wing in their facility. It might be called something like the Sunset something, I forget. But there are actually multiple hospices who have contracted with Maria Joseph Manor to have hospice patients in that area, and the hospice comes in and takes care of them while they're there. So there are a lot of organizations in the area. Again, the hardest thing is just having the conversation, getting doctors, getting individuals to be comfortable talking about end of life and doing that planning. And I'm going to stop talking now so that if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. I would love to answer anything. Yes?
What does hospice look like? You mentioned that some people are uninsured, and you mentioned about benefits. Of course, that's with insured people. So what does hospice look like for those who have no insurance?
I can't speak for all hospices, but I will say for our hospice, we have what's called a patient care fund. And we actually, in addition to that, we also have members of the community who have donated and have created an endowment that we can use for those patients that don't have insurance so that we can still ensure that they are taken care of at end of life. Yeah.
I have a question. I hear the word palliative care. How does that compare or distinguish from hospice?
Yes, thank you for asking. That was going to be my next thing. So a lot of people do ask, so what is the difference between hospice and palliative care? The easiest way for me to explain it to you is to use the cancer diagnosis. So let's say you have someone who has breast cancer, and maybe they're a young mother of 3 and they were diagnosed with breast cancer. So obviously she wants to continue to live for her children and seek treatment and try to cure the cancer or at least put it in remission. So that individual, that mother, might go to chemotherapy and radiation. But unfortunately, as we all know, chemotherapy and radiation all have side effects. Sometimes those side effects are so significant that it really impacts the person's ability to not only continue with treatment, but just to be able to enjoy their children or their everyday life. So in that instance, the individual is still seeking the treatment, whether it's chemo, radiation, blood transfusions, IV therapy, whatever it might be. But palliative medicine then treats the symptoms related to the treatment. So if you think about palliative medicine being someone who wants to continue to do treatment and wants their symptoms to be managed, that's what palliative medicine is. Hospice, on the other hand, is for those individuals who may have a breast cancer diagnosis. They've done all of the chemotherapy and radiation that they can. Maybe their cancer was cured at one point, but now it's back and it's back somewhere else, and there's not any treatment available to them, or they had such a bad reaction to the chemo that they had before that they make the decision not to do treatment. So hospice is more about those who either don't want to do treatment or don't have a treatment that's available to them, which would make it terminal, versus someone who wants to go for treatment but still wants to have their symptoms managed. And along with that, I know Geisinger, UPMC, WellSpan, we all have palliative programs. In that case, some of the physicians even travel, they do home visits because sometimes people can't get out of their home. So they'll spend a whole day or 2 days a month traveling out to see people to kind of get their symptoms managed. So that's really the difference. Does that help? Any other questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned that sometimes the nurse is in the home and the medicines aren't doing what they're supposed to do and you place them back in the hospital. Why are you making that decision and not the patient? Does the patient surrender their ability to make decisions when you are on site?
Absolutely not.
But that's what you said.
So what I'm saying is that's an option. I'm not saying that they have to.
Okay.
You know, certainly if someone, so let me just kind of elaborate on that a little bit. When we bring someone onto our service, we actually have what the Girl Scout in me likes to call our what if pack. You'll hear it called a comfort pack. It has pain medication, it has anxiety medication, medication for your bowels. There's about 5 or 6 different medications in there for if something happens in this area at 2 o'clock in the morning, we don't have any pharmacies available to get medication. So that's what that little box, the what if box, is for. So we would be in the home working with those medications and whatever else they have prescribed. If we get to a point where what we have with us at that moment isn't working, it always is the patient's right to tell us and lead us. We would never arbitrarily say, well, you have to go to the hospital. There's actually cultures in our area that believe that the more that you suffer in your physical life, the better your afterlife will be. So we have had people refuse, but we want people to know that we offer that as an option. And to further elaborate on that, when they do go into the hospital, we all know what it's like when you go to the emergency room. You think, oh my word, I'm going to get the $1 million workup because they're not going to be able to figure out what's wrong with me. In a hospice scenario, we're notifying the hospital, we're directly admitting the patient there as a hospice patient, and we're not doing a million different tests. We're doing the bare necessity, because if you think about what hospice is, it's really about comfort and quality of life. So it makes no sense to have you poked for blood every 6 hours or, you know, have all of these tests, because we already know what's wrong. We just need to manage the symptom. But it always is 100% of the time the patient's choice whether they want to go or not. To kind of go a different direction with that, there's a myth that when hospice comes in, we take away all your medications too. We don't do that. That's your choice. What I will say is what does happen is that if you are coming on service with hospice and you do have a terminal diagnosis, it already means that your organs aren't functioning properly. So are some of the medications that you're currently taking, and most of the time people are on 30 plus medications by the time they get to us. Are those medications really necessary? Do you really need to take aspirin every day if you know that your life expectancy is 3 months or 3 weeks because of a cancer? Do you really need to take vitamin C? You know, we're never going to arbitrarily say you can't take those things, but we do have a conversation with you about, does this make sense? Because particularly people might be having nausea. Well, if I was taking 30 pills, I would be having nausea too, and I wouldn't have an appetite. So, you know, it's just that kind of stuff. But people do think, you know, that we just come in and arbitrarily do things, and we don't. And if you ever experience that, that's not the way that it's supposed to be.
So are you prolonging life or prolonging death with those medications? You know, if
That's
hospice is in, you're already expecting death.
Correct. Right. And is the medication really effective if you have, because sometimes if your organs aren't functioning properly, you're not getting rid of the metabolites and things from the medication. So is it building up in your system and causing some of the issues that you're having? You know, we always explain risk versus benefit, and then it's up to the patient to make the decision about what they want to do. Any other questions?
Good morning, and thank you for being here. I was just wondering, how do you handle conflict, perhaps between family members and the patient, or the patient and the spouse, if there are disagreements and you are kind of pinned in the middle as to how you guide them? That must be pretty difficult.
We live in a perfect world, and there's never any conflict. That was your funny for the day. That is probably 85% of our job. If you ever want to see the golden family come alive, it's when someone is preparing for death, particularly if there's money involved. Or you have maybe a sibling, you have a child who's taking care of a parent and a sibling who's out of state, who never comes to visit, but, you know, tries to kind of stir the pot. What we do in those situations is we try to put a nix to that right from the get-go. We have a person that we can talk to, and we try to limit it to one person. Obviously, if there's somebody out of state, we're not going to deny them access to the information unless we're told to. But what we like to do is have one person who's relaying information to the rest of the family. If it gets to the point that you're talking about, which it does many times in our daily activities, that's where the social worker, the nurses, and myself kind of come into, we have a family meeting. And we try to help them communicate amongst each other so that everybody understands where the other one is coming from and appreciate their perspective. Maybe the individual who's not comfortable with making mom a do not resuscitate doesn't really understand that if they are wanting them to have CPR, that if they have CPR and they're revived, they're going to come back to a state that's less than what they currently are. So sometimes it's just those little explanations because there's pieces of knowledge that people don't know. Sometimes there's not. And so then we have to be a little bit firmer and say, in order for us to properly care for your loved one, this is what we need to do. But most of the time, if you're providing, it's usually an information thing. They just don't know, or they don't understand. And if you take that extra little bit of time to explain that, it usually kind of smooths it over. But very good question.
Yes, very good. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Kathy, for
Thank you
coming
very
and
much for
sharing.
your time and
We
attention.
appreciate that. And again, if you have any questions afterwards, you can reach out to Kathy with WellSpan and see what you can do there. Thank you very much. And I Forgot my notes. Our next speaker this morning is Pastor Jeff Dunkel. Excuse me. Pastor Jeff is an assistant pastor at Emmanuel Bible Fellowship Church over in Sunbury, and they have a very active grief share ministry. And so Pastor Jeff is going to come and help us prepare the family by way of grief share. And I'm going to make sure this thing works. Let's see here. Do we have the PowerPoint going? Does that? There we go. Okay, good. So, Pastor Jeff, why don't you come up and share? And that arrow advances it, and that takes it back.
Very good.
That's all you need.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And Kathy, wow, what a wonderful presentation there. And what a great segue to what I'm going to be sharing, because of the family interaction is so important during this whole process of dying and planning for the future. So my parents benefited from hospice ministry, and universally I found them to be just a fantastic resource. And I would encourage people not to hesitate to utilize their services at any time. A lot of our topics are going to kind of interface or connect with one another, and Kathy's mentioning about the family interactions is something that I'm going to be dealing with. So I'll try not to get into some of these other areas, because we do have some really good experts that are very qualified to share on their topics. So I'm going to begin by sharing about the Grief Share ministry at Emmanuel, and other churches are offering that as well. As a church-based ministry that's offered free of charge to anyone who chooses to attend. Is anyone here familiar with Grief Share at all? Okay, a couple of you, so you know the benefits that offers to people. Let me just give you a little bit of background here. I am the associate pastor at Emmanuel, and I work primarily with seniors and a lot with people that are in the process of changing locations to heaven. That's our goal, to get people as prepared for heaven as we possibly can. And so that's the focus of my ministry there, is not exclusively, but largely with our seniors, and just walking with them and their family members through that grief process. What brought me to Emmanuel and brought me to Grief Share, and what brings me here was the fact that I retired, and I got to Emmanuel, and they said, "We need help, and would you be a pastor to the senior citizens there and do some other ministry things?" So I'm out of retirement, part-time at least. But wasn't long after that my wife and I retired, we moved out of Lancaster County to the New Berlin area that COVID struck. You guys all remember that, and the challenge it was for pastors to manage what you do with churches and how you do worship and things like that. And during that time, our middle child, our oldest son, who was 42 years old, got very sick, and he had some underlying health conditions, but he was hospitalized in Lancaster General Hospital in Lancaster City, and they would only allow one visitor to come at a time, and that was his wife. He had just adopted a baby 2 months previously, and he was in the hospital, and Ruthie and I couldn't visit him. We could talk to him on the phone, but he was in there for a week, and they were trying to sort out what was going on, and they thought they had a handle on it, and he was in the process of being discharged, and he had just a terrible seizures. And the rest of the story, compressed here very shortly, is that they had brain surgery and he didn't make it through that. And so the only time we got to see him was when he was just on life support. He was clinically brain dead at the time. And it was so difficult. And so we got to Emmanuel, and we were grieving. We're still grieving, by the way. Grief doesn't end. It's always there. And we got to Emmanuel, and we were grieving, and the pastor said, I think you guys could benefit from the Grief Share ministry, because this is very fresh to us when we started attending there. And we began attending Grief Share that was offered once in the fall for 13 weeks and once in the spring for 13 weeks. And we just really, really benefited from it. And we're still healing in that process. We'll never get there. They say that you grieve deeply when you love deeply, and we sure loved our son. And just a year or two before that, both my parents died within 2 months of each other. My wife's dad died. So some of you kind of identify with that. You've got parents, loved ones, relatives that die very close to one another and time-wise, and it's difficult. So that's how we got involved in the Grief Share ministry. But no amount of preparation can fully equip any of us for death. Grief Share, let me talk a little bit about Grief Share here. What is it? Grief Share is a grief recovering support group for those, and it's for adults. It's not for teenagers or children. It's for adults who are grieving the loss of a family member or friend. And it provides a safe and healthy place to process grief, to find help and healing for the hurt of losing a loved one. And so it's beneficial in the fact, one of the reasons it's beneficial is that you're there with other people, and there's strict confidentiality, that nothing leaves that room, that you're able to share your feelings, your emotions, and you're able to connect with other people that are also grieving. And it helps to be able to talk. Sometimes people are hesitant to talk. Nobody's required to share in the group, but we find that the more comfortable people get with each other, the more they're open and willing to share. And part of that sharing process is very, very helpful to not gunny sack all the grief and just keep it inside, but be able to express that and know that other people are walking through grief as well, and they do understand. There you'll be encouraged by people who are where you are. They've been where you've come from, and you'll learn how to manage those emotions and stress. It's very, very helpful. So my wife and I are now facilitators. We've been facilitators for a couple of years, and we just are blessed as we hear how other people are connecting to the resources that we have. The hosts there's a video series, and I'll kind of walk through what we do in Grief Share. And by the way, I have some brochures here I'll be glad to give you if you'd like more information on that. But there are 52 different experts who are pastors, counselors, teachers, who give incredible insight. And so it's very rich, and it's, of course, from a Christian point of view. And then there are testimonials from just average people like you and me who have been in a traumatic situation, non-traumatic situation, all kinds of death situations. You know, the loss of a child, loss of a parent, tragic death, sudden death. We have people from all over those gamuts of grief who share personally their experience and how they've found some healing in the process. It's not a 5-step program, and that's not the way grief works, right? It's like, okay, if you go through these 5 steps, these 5 processes, these 5 stages, then you'll be okay. Well, that's not at all true. That you don't get over it. And sometimes people say, we just need to get over the loss. Well, you don't get over it, but with God's help, and with the help of others, you can get through it and manage it a lot better. So let me just kind of outline what Grief Share, what the Grief Share Ministry is. We meet once a week, 13 sessions, 1.5 hours a week. And in the fall, we have an extra evening together, so that would make 14 in the fall, called Surviving the Holidays. It's tough to get through the holidays. I know when we lost our loved ones in our family, boy, Thanksgiving was a bear. It was really tough. Maybe you found the same thing. Christmas was really tough. New Year's, birthdays, holidays. It's very, very difficult. And so there's a whole session devoted to surviving the holidays. And we find universally it's a challenge for us. When you'd rather skip some of these topics, when you'd rather skip the holidays, emotional ambushes. You've had emotional ambushes. I've had a lot of them when we walk through grief. You know, I go into a grocery store and I see a product that my mom asked me to buy for her. And, you know, I break down in tears in a grocery store. What are you crying looking to the cereal aisle for, you know? Well, my dad used to like cinnamon, you know, Toast Grahams or whatever they're called. And I see those things sitting on the shelf, and it's like, oh, it's tough. So those are emotional ambushes, things you're not prepared for. And the holidays are rampant with those kinds of, situations. Preparing for hard-hitting moments, survivor wisdom. Where do you find the strength? Are you numbing your pain? Some people will numb the pain of grief, which is not healthy. There's ways to deal with that. And we learn how to manage our grief, how to express it, and work through it. And so the elements of that are, there we go, the review. There's a workbook. It's a grief share. Now, this is a little thicker. This is a leader's guide. It's about half. But there's a workbook that attendees are able to take notes based on the video sessions, and then there's a workbook that they're to work on during the week. And we never put people on a guilt trip if they didn't get to their homework during the week, because sometimes they're just emotionally not able to do that. But we'll begin a session by reviewing the workbook from the previous week's video. They'll be able to work through that. There's a lot of resources there. After we work through the workbook, then we have a video of an essential topic and stories of people who have found healing in their grief. And then we'll discuss the video. Next week we'll come back, and then after they've done their workbooks, then we'll discuss it. So we just repeat that cycle. It's a very simple setup. There are training models for facilitators, which are good. Lots of resources in GriefShare. And if you just want to look at it on your own, you can look it up. It's griefshare.org, griefshare.org. And there's online videos. When you sign up there's daily email messages, a Facebook page, a guided journal there is available. It's very gospel-based. And it's not just for Christians, but non-Christians. Now, it's definitely Christian-oriented, Christian-focused. And it's very evangelistic, and they talk about heaven, preparing for heaven, and what the gospel can do for you. So it's a great way to reach people who are even non-churched, who are grieving as well. So that's a very brief synopsis there of the Grief Share Ministry. I can take some questions at the end, but let me just talk about preparing for a loved one's death. Okay. It's not advancing there for me, or not advancing correct. I don't know if I did something wrong there, but preparing for a loved one, maybe you can manage it back there somehow. Preparing for a loved one's death. There's family dynamics always involved in that situation. Yeah. Oh. Well, no, we're at the other. Okay. That's the one I need to advance, but if it's not, I can handle it. That's all right. There's family dynamics, and I appreciate what Kathy said. You got to figure out pretty much who's in charge, who's the spokesman, and having a family meeting is very helpful. I like how hospice approaches that. That's very good. Be proactive and reactive, not reactive. Being proactive is helpful. Proactive means that we're thinking through the questions together before they're even asked, helping people to prepare, helping family members to think about what's coming. The goal for the dying is dignity and love, to let them know that they're loved, and to let them die with dignity. Hospice helps that, but even if there's not hospice involved, we want our loved ones to know that they are loved. And when my mom and dad were dying, my dad, we came from a background where he never, he never said, he was not an emotional person. Let me say that. I've never heard my dad say, "I love you." And some of us have had, you can relate to that. And so when my dad was kind of nearing the end and I was helping to care for him, I would tell Dad that I loved him. "Dad, I love you." And that was really difficult. But I became more comfortable with it. And just a day or two before he died, he said, "Jeff, I love you." And that was kind of cool, kind of cool to hear. But just let people know you love them, regardless of how they live their lives. Everybody deserves love and dignity. And I remember talking to my mom, and I wanted to make sure that I thanked my mom for all the hard work she did as well. And I said, "Mom, you were a good mom." I mentioned some of the things she did for us boys when we were young, and she said, "Well, I don't know about that." So I never realized that throughout her whole life, she never got that confidence, never got that sense that she was doing things well or right. And so I wanted to make sure that before she moved on to heaven, that here on earth, she understood that she was really appreciated. And so in preparing for a family member's death, we need to say things that need to be said. I love you, go over memories, express gratitude. Maybe we need to extend forgiveness to one of our loved ones, to forgive them. Say, "I forgive you." You have to be careful with that, because sometimes we can say, "I forgive you," and they don't recall why we're forgiving them. And maybe they don't think they did anything wrong to need forgiveness. So that one is important, though, to say if the way is clear on that. But you have to be careful in that regard. And then to maybe ask forgiveness with one of our loved ones. Say, "I'm sorry that I did such and such." And it's not just beneficial for that person, but it's beneficial for us too. So that after that loved one passes away, we're not walking through that field of guilt thinking, "Well, I wish I would have apologized. I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have said that." And one of the things that I wish I would have done was to pick my parents' brains about some of the things that they experienced back in the day. My parents grew up in the Great Depression. And they told me a couple of things, but where they grew up in that generation didn't seem to want to talk a whole lot about what happened back then. They kind of kept it to themselves, and they took those memories to the grave with them. And there's so many questions that I wish I would have asked my parents before they passed away. And so we can ask them questions, and it's healthy for them to ask us questions as well. Say, "Is there anything you wanted to ask me about anything at all?" And children, wow. But before I talk about children, let me talk about to do things with loved ones. Make sure that when we meet with them, there's a quality time. It's a meaningful time, but it's quality time. We're not just sitting, holding their hand, watching them die, but even when it appears they may be sleeping, there's some possibility that they're hearing what we're saying, right? And I've heard some hospice workers say, "Well, one of the last things that goes is the hearing." And so be careful what you say. Be guarded. Don't just say things because you think they're not with it. They may be very much with it. Maybe not able to tell you that, but make sure that we have meaningful time. And it's okay to just sit there quietly, but also have conversations. Hold hands with them if they're okay with that. Find out about their wishes. What do they want? Sometimes people don't write down, that's a great paper there that we have about writing your wishes, what you want done for your funeral, and so forth. Some people are very detailed, aren't they? They've mapped it all out. I went to a service last week where the lady knew that the end was near, and boy, she had everything mapped out. And boy, that helps us pastors, you know, in the service. I mean, it was very detailed, and it was followed right according to the plan, but not everybody is like that. And so, again, if it's possible, and if it's okay with the person, then you can talk about, well, what do you want? If they realize a lot of times our loved ones are in denial that they're dying. And that's one of the big challenges we face, that they don't recognize the fact that they're dying. And as a pastor, I've always appreciated when people acknowledge the fact, yeah, I'm nearing, when somebody says, I'm nearing the end, and I realize that, and if they recognize that and they embrace that, then they'll be more likely to share some details of what they would like to have happen once they're gone. Not everybody is like that, so again, you need to be discreet and wise in that regard. Don't bottle up emotions. If you want to cry, you can cry there. It's okay to cry. And Grisher teaches it, that God has given us that emotion of crying. Get help with tasks. Involve other family members as much as possible. Journal. Clarify family roles. And I already mentioned like reconciling and asking forgiveness if necessary. And sometimes when a loved one dies, it's also a time for other family members who aren't dying, and you to get together and maybe do some reconciliation too, to get on the same page. Children process grief differently. Younger age, like preschool kids, they're expecting their loved one to return sometime. And sometimes we use figurative language, and they're not into the abstract then. They don't understand a lot of abstract concepts about death. Primary school kids, they're beginning to understand about death, and they are beginning to understand it's permanent. When they get into middle school, upper elementary, middle school, they understand pretty well, and they'll verbalize a lot. They're very engaged in Q&A. And when they become teens, they understand very well, but they're questioning the emotional aspects of processing grief, and they're going to need really, really a lot of help there. And they can emotionally withdraw too as teens, and that's dangerous. So look for the warning signs of other family members. There are many, and Grief Share kind of helps us to figure out what those warning signs may be. Not eating, not sleeping, angry all the time. And kids can be happy one time and then super sad another time. It's kind of like it's a yo-yo. Their emotions are all over the place. And so just be there for them. By the way, one little thing I found, got this on Amazon. It's called Grandpa's Story. For when my wife and I, she's got one, it's called Grandma's Story. And it's a great book to put your memories in to pass down to future generations. It's a great tool. You can put pictures in there, early childhood, school years, work and travel, love and family, character and values, curiosity, words of wisdom. It's fantastic. Don't have to do it all, but it's a great tool to just pass down to your family. It's kind of a legacy thing there as well that we found. Ruthie's already started hers. I haven't started mine. And I hope I get it started, maybe finished before I die, but who knows. Take a moment for questions here. I'm out of time just about. Any questions about Grief Share or the family dynamics? Okay. All right. I'll move on then. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very
brother.
much.
Uh-huh.
There's one. Okay.
I met you up in Emmanuel. I knew when you went up.
Yes.
One of the things that I find that no matter who passes away, people mean well, but they have to be careful what they say. I usually just say, I'm sorry for your loss. Saying, well, it's for the best. it may be best for the person that passed on, but it's the people that are left behind.
Yes.
And that's where the issue is, and what works for one person does not for another.
Right.
And you have to be real careful with that, and maybe even people that say something with good intentions, it can come out in a very, very long way.
Mm-hmm.
And each family member, it depends on the, I want to say, the circumstance that they had with that particular person. I want to say this. Let's just say I know an incident of where someone passed away. And one person went and one person didn't go. And the business of forgiveness is good, but you have to look at both aspects of it, and they both were right. There was a connection with the one person. With the other person, there was no connection. Well, there was another individual that was stuck in the middle, we'll say. But you have to be real careful with that because you don't know the full dynamics of that. And that can be a bad thing to make comments on or
Right.
judgments,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. And one of the things that Grief Share helps with is knowing, and you heard that too when you were attending our Grief Share, is learning how to respond to those comments. And sometimes people are trying to be helpful, but they're not. And how do we respond to those things? And it gives us tools to.
Well, I have a friend that
help in that regard,
is
so.
in the Grief Share quite a bit. And like she said, these particular individuals will say, are adult enough that they can make their own decisions. They both were right. One had, like I said, a brief, somewhat connection with the person. The other one didn't. The other one didn't have any connection at all. And if you don't know the whole situation, you have to be real careful with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And another thing is people say, well, you'll get over it. You don't get over it.
No.
You learn to go
You get-
on and deal with it, and
Right.
everybody deals with it in their own way.
Yes, very good. Yeah,
What
and we get
works for
through it.
one person does not, there's no cut and dry,
Yep.
this is what I did, and
Yeah.
that'll work for you.
Yeah.
No, because we're all different people.
That's right.
And
And if I can mention, sorry to interrupt you, if I can mention too there, that some people come to Grief Share multiple times. It's not a once and done thing, right?
Well,
Some
that
people
was the
come
other
back.
thing. I lost a daughter very unexpectedly.
Yeah.
When I called in the morning, she had just passed away. It was Pastor Hunt knows. I went to something just last Christmas, and when I got there, I know that's not a good thing to do, but I go through a lot of things of a lot of the care that was given to her, and it was not right. And I kind of lose it at times, and I have to be real careful. But the one gentleman said to me, I was really enthused. I thought this looks like it might help, although your session did. And actually, I was very impressed with yours because I had gone to a different one too that didn't work. And this one gentleman says, it sounds like whatever you say about this is like a rehearsal. Well, in a sense, he was right, but I will never go back. If they beg me to go to that church, I will not go. There is no set pattern. Yeah, I am too.
Thank you, Jeff. Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
okay?
yeah, by all means. This is important stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Just one.
Okay, good.
One note too on that. You're right. Everybody processes differently.
Yeah.
And I'll just say one thing that's really a pet peeve of mine is people say, "Oh, I understand what you're going through." No, you don't.
No, every situation
Yeah,
is different.
You can't understand.
That's right.
You can't understand what they're going through, but you can say, "I don't understand what you're going through, but you're not going to go through it alone."
Yes.
and we'll help through that. So, yes.
Absolutely.
Who else?
People just need to know you care. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when we're going through grief, whether we were close to that person or not close to that person or the family of that person, we need to extend, I mean, they're still processing in their own way, and we need to extend our grace to them,
Yes.
okay? And just, and not everybody knows to do that. So extend your grace and just say to yourself even, that's how they're processing it, that's what they think or whatever, and not get into any of these little
That's good.
arguments that go on.
Yeah, that's good, because it can be very tense and ugly time for the family. And that's well said. Thank you.
Just a quick side thought here. It's not just your family and friends that grieve, your pets grieve as well. When my sister was in the hospital for weeks, the dog went to the front door and waited every night, waiting for her to come home. When she passed, my niece took her to the funeral home, let the dog sniff the body. The dog hyperventilated and settled down. That night, the dog slept with my niece.
Wow.
So they need closure as well.
Yeah, I have a heart for pets too, and we got a lady in our church just passed away, and she had a little dog, and they don't know what to do with the dog. And I, I'm a dog, I'm a pet lover, and like, I grieve for the lady, but I'm grieving for a dog too, Yeah. Anyone else?
Could I just add something to that? I have a friend that said she had cats, like stray cats came around, and the one died, and she took it up on the hill and she buried it somewhere. And the other ones went up and they actually sat there like they were mourning for it.
Yeah.
It was like they mourned for the one that was gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. By the way, I offered to take that dog, because I like that little dog that the lady had, and my wife says, no, we've already got one, so, no.
Any others? Okay. Thank you so much. This is what this seminar is for. We talk and we discuss. Let me just say a brief word too about that funeral planning sheet that's in your binder there. It's a great, simple resource. It's not a legal document, but you can write down, these are my wishes. This is what I'd like to have at my memorial service or my funeral. This is the funeral director, all those things. And fill that out. Keep a copy for yourself. Give to your loved ones so they know. And give a copy to your pastor. It just helps tremendously to prepare in advance for the inevitable. So thank you, Pastor Jeff. Very, very informative. And again, any other questions you have for Grief Share, feel free to reach out.
I'll make this available in the back.
Okay, yes. He'll have some brochures available on the back table that you can be sure to pick up there as well. Our next speaker is Drew Payton, right? Drew Payton is he's a funeral director with Hummel Funeral Home in Middleburg, and he's going to come and share with us a little bit about how to prepare for a funeral. So, Drew, thanks very much. And there's water if you need it.
Hello everyone, I'm Drew with Hummel Funeral Home. I'm just going to touch base on the steps on how the funeral process works here and on arrangements and the burial process. It all starts with a death call at the funeral home there. When we receive that death call, we like to get first call information like the deceased's full name, where they're located, if the deceased is ready to be released into the funeral home's care, and then also the next of kin information and who's calling. When a funeral director and their team comes to your home, the first thing they're going to do is come in and pay their respects to the family and the deceased and kind of maneuver their way through the home to see how they're going to bring the loved one into their care. If there's any obstacles that they have to maneuver through, we have the equipment for that. We'll then ask if there's any necessary paperwork we need to receive from hospice that helps us file the death certificate. And then we'll also ask what their final wishes were, if the embalming process is necessary for a public viewing. The embalming process will preserve the deceased through the funeral period for the viewing. We'll then explain, to the family that we'll go get our equipment there. They're more than welcome to step to another room or be present. All the families are different, and then we'll simply go get our equipment there and receive their loved one into our care, and then we'll set up a time with them to come into the funeral home the next day or a day that works for them to follow through with arrangements. When preparing for arrangements, it's necessary to bring in all the vital information of the deceased, like the Social Security information, where the deceased was born, parents' names, highest degree of education, and then also all the necessary information you want for the obituary to be published. We'll also go over during the arrangements how many death certificates you're going to need. Now, death certificates are anything that with money value that needs closed or transferred, or like bank accounts that need closed, and then also for settling personal affairs like estates. During the arrangements, like I said, we'll plan the obituary. When planning the obituary, we'll go over what the deceased did for work, hobbies and interests, any memberships or organizations that the deceased was a part of. And then we'll also go over the service details that we would like, and then the funeral home will coordinate with the clergy and the cemetery to facilitate those services. We offer a wide range of funerals, from funeral service to cremation services. If you do choose a funeral service, we have a wide range from wood to steel casket options. You can personalize those with custom casket panels and the corner emblems. If you guys were like a Mason or anything like that, you can really customize those. And if you do choose cremation, you can still customize the urn with the dates and anything that personalizes the deceased, to honor their wishes. And then if you don't choose cremation or funeral services, there's also body donation programs that help others in need. And then you'll receive the cremated remains at a later date whenever that process is completed. But that's also another form of disposition that helps others in need. Your traditional funeral services generally consist of an evening viewing, and then followed by the next day of a viewing, and then the funeral service. And then we'll go in procession where we put all the flags in your cars, and we'll go in procession to the cemetery there, and we'll do a formal graveside service. And if touching on military funeral services, if the veteran was honorably discharged, they're entitled to a burial plot if it's in a national cemetery, a headstone, a marker, and also a flag. And at the burial site, you'll see that they'll do the folding of the flag and present it to the next of kin, and then also the rifle volleys to honor the veteran. When it comes to paying for the funerals, I know people tend to get generally worked up about that. Can be a big figure there. We like to work with the families. If they have life insurance policies, we can do insurance assignments to collect those funds through the insurance companies. Most funeral homes accept cash, check, or debit card, and then if we need to work out any payment plans or anything like that, we like to do that as well. So we can honor the family's wishes and not have that burden on the family. A big thing is families choose to pre-plan their arrangements. They'll come into the funeral home there, and that way we can get a good understanding of what their wishes were, and we'll put those funds into if they choose to prepay, we'll put those funds into a trust account so those monies sit safely, and whenever that time comes, we just simply receive those funds, and then we can honor what the deceased, what their wishes were, and they, tell us that personally. So, we can really honor their wishes. And like I said, we'll also we'll coordinate with cemeteries, and if you don't have a plot or a lot, we can help facilitate that. We'll make all the necessary phone calls, and then when the service time comes, we'll give them a call to have the grave opened and dug for the graveside to be taking place. Families do choose to write their own obituaries. Like I said, when you come into the funeral home, we'll go over, what the deceased did for work, their hobbies and everything. But like I said, they'll sometimes come in with the obituary already prepared, and that's great. We'll still proofread the obituaries and then ask if the families want those published in any newspapers. And then it's typically on the funeral home's website, for people to share amongst social media and their friends and family. Well, I think that covers everything here. Is there, do you guys have any questions for me?
I'll start off. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Can you give us a ballpark of the cost for a funeral, burial versus cremation,
Sure.
for example? I know it's kind of changing, but
Sure.
what generally would be the cost?
Yeah, so your traditional funeral, you're going to have to select your casket, and then typically there's a larger expense for the opening and closing of the cemetery because it is a bigger space. So it all depends on what merchandise you select. Like I said, a casket, and then there has to be a vault that accompanies the casket. All the cemeteries require an outer burial container to help maintain their grounds, and it also protects the casket from any outside, dirt or water or anything like that. But ballpark, you're looking at around, I'd say, $10,000 to $15,000 for a traditional funeral service. And then if you do choose cremation, it's still merchandise there, choosing your urn. And then if you do choose to bury the urn at a cemetery, which you can still do, they make special marble urns to where you don't need to use a vault. Now, if you do choose like a wood urn or anything that'll disintegrate in the ground, then you will need a vault. But with the marble urns, they just act as a two-in-one, like an urn and vault combo, and then we can use that. And then also if the family wants, a visitation period and a memorial service, or just strictly a graveside service. So it all depends on what you select there. We have different packages with different pricing, but let's say a traditional, let's say visitation memorial service, you're looking probably around $5,000 to $7,000 for that there. And then with your traditional funeral services, like I said, probably $10,000 to $15,000. It's all depending on what you select there. Yeah.
Another question. In Pennsylvania, what is the law regarding spreading someone's ashes?
Well, there really isn't any law. We just release the cremated remains to the family, and they can just do everything on their own, and that privately or where they want to do that. But there's really no law that we have to follow there for scattering the remains. Yeah.
And I have one other question, and then I'll let everyone else ask. If you were to donate your body to science, what's the process of that? How does that work?
Yep, there's different body donation programs down in like Philadelphia and Baltimore and things like that. We'll help coordinate with those companies there to do the transfer of the deceased, and then they'll do their process down at their location there. Let's say Philadelphia there. That's our main body donor program that we use is in Philadelphia, and they'll do the process down there, and then we'll typically there's that they're free of charge, you know, because you're donating, and you know that's free of charge, so there's no charges there. And then you'll receive the cremated remains. The company will then mail the remains to the funeral home at a later date then, and then we'll, you know, call the family there to have them come pick up the remains.
Now, you said free of charge, but there is a charge to transport the body to the place, or is that covered as well?
Well, that's all covered.
It is?
Yep, that's
Okay.
all covered.
Okay. Is that something that needs to be prearranged, or?
Yes, it's better to, they actually have forms on their websites and stuff that you can go to help already, you know, fill out and get the process started there. So when the time comes, they have all of your information there, and they know, you know, who's, you know, what they're working with there.
Great.
Yeah.
Wells, yes.
Two things. When you order your death certificates, order more than you think you need.
Yes, yep,
Okay.
that's very accurate. Yeah, a good number to start out with for death certificates is usually 10. You know, like I said, if they're married and they're still joint on accounts and things like that, then maybe you won't need as many. But you know, in the funeral homes, they do notify Social Security, so that's, you know, one less one you got to worry about. But you know, 10's always a good number to start with. Just, it's all, you know, on assets and, you know, things that you have that you need to close and transfer. So it all varies on different families there, but 10's
Yeah.
always a good number to start with.
Okay. The other thing is this scientific, you know, put the body, donate to science or whatever. I read an article about one particular place. I don't remember the name of it, so I couldn't tell you anyway, but they were collecting their monies from whatever sources for doing this and claiming that the body was donated to science, and they were just stashing bodies everywhere, but they weren't
Well,
actually.
I wouldn't believe that. Well, whoever we work with will never, that will never
Right,
happen.
just,
So.
just be careful.
Yeah, no, we always, you know, whoever we work with, we make sure everything's done in a dignified manner. And, you know, definitely in funeral service, we do that here at Hummel and also at Siebold Funeral Home in Selinsgrove. We offer dignified service and make sure that it's done to the utmost respect.
Yeah, if you donate your body to science, and depending on what you died from or the condition, can they reject your body?
Yep, yes, sir, yep. If there's any complications with the deceased, sometimes they can reject the deceased, maybe from, say the deceased has been found deceased for, you know, a couple of days, then that kind of hinders the process. Or sometimes actually weight can play a factor in it too. You know.
Yeah, go ahead.
When a Pennsylvania resident passes away outside the Commonwealth, is there legal procedures to bring them back, or can you just throw them in the back of the pickup truck and take them to your funeral home?
Well, yeah, there's, so wherever the decedent dies in that state, they have to actually file the death certificate in that state. But we just facilitate with where the deceased passed away at, or you know, sometimes we'll call a local funeral home in the area to do the initial transfer, and then we'll just go up to the funeral home, or via airplane or how that needs to be, we can get the deceased, you know, back into our funeral home's care. But the only difference would be that the death certificate will be from that state. So say they pass away in Maryland, then that funeral home in Maryland who did the initial transfer will have to file a death certificate. But that's the only difference there.
And there would be transportation costs?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah.
Is there a set fee, or how does that work?
That's all subject to change. It's all, you know, if we do kind of a package, you know, like say receiving receiving someone from a outside third-party funeral home, then there's charges with that. But we give a general price list when all the families come into the funeral home, and if you want to come in, you know, the pre-plan, we'll give you that general price list that has all the charges that give you a good rundown on what everything costs. But yeah, there typically is a charge for the transportation.
Yeah, I was just reminded of a story of a friend whose dad passed away in Georgia, and he was cremated down there. They made arrangements, and they needed to ship him up here. They came by UPS. His
Well,
urn.
USPS.
Yes.
USPS
okay.
is the only one that can carry cremated remains.
But
Mhm.
they,
That's, yes.
they were waiting, him and his sister were waiting for this urn to arrive.
Yep, you can
And,
mail cremated remains in urns,
Right.
but it has to be via USPS. That's the only
And
carrier.
he was very seldom at home, so they shipped it to a school where his sister worked.
Oh my. Oh my.
So when they arrived, nobody knew what this box was. They put it in the supply cabinet,
Oh my.
and it was several weeks they called down and said, "Well, where's our dad?" They says, "Well, they signed for him at the high school, you know."
Wow.
They found it was in a box
Yeah,
that
was
looked
a-
like it was from Office Depot or something, or
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely a mistake there.
Yeah, that's a grief share moment there, isn't it?
I don't know, maybe you're not the right person to ask, but we talked about donating bodies to science. What about organ donation? You know, sometimes too, even this body might be dead, but it's kept alive for the purpose of organ donation. How does that work?
Yes, we can still do the embalming process after. So say someone passes away, then they're an organ donor. Then they do the procedure following the death. Once that's completed, the funeral home will receive the loved one into their care, and we can still do the embalming process just as a traditional funeral, and we can still lay the deceased out in a casket and everything like that. It just it may hinder the embalming process a little bit since for the organ donation, but we can still do any traditional services or anything that your wishes are. But that's the hospital will take care of all that at the time of the passing, and then once all that's completed there, they'll just call the funeral home, and we can go to the hospital there to receive the loved one.
I would also add that if you are an organ donor, please let your loved ones know, because that needs to be taken care of probably before you call the funeral director or, along those lines. So make sure your loved one knows that.
How old do they wait till, as a donor, how long, is it too old at a certain age, or can it?
It just all depends on the condition of the deceased. Yeah, that's all depends on the condition. Yes, ma'am. Yes, so that's the good thing about pre-planning. We can then, put those monies in an account there, and it stays that way, and we don't charge that price today at the passing. We honor the wishes at that time. The only difference would be like your cash advances, like say the cost of death certificates go up like from $20 to $40, then that would be an additional cost. But all the funeral home charges and the casket and so say it would be like the cash advances, like your third parties, like your cemetery opening, closing. Say that goes up at the time, and say we put $500 away for that, and then at the time of the passing, it's $800. That might be a difference, you know, that through. But all the funeral home, like all the services at the funeral home, the casket and all that, the vault, that's all locked in place there whenever you pre-plan and prepay.
And also you said that like if somebody donates their organs, you can still have a viewing for
Abs-
that cremation, because my sister was cremated, she didn't donate her organs.
Oh, absolutely.
People that did, you can,
Yep, we can still do every process just the same as if there weren't an organ donor.
so if you get cremated and you have that urn, you can be buried with any family member.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Even years that, like when my sister passed away, my niece wanted to have the cremation. She didn't see me driving all the way to Virginia, and he finally said, well, that's okay, because I had my life with her when we were younger.
Sure.
I figured it wasn't worth creating family friction, you know.
Right.
And my niece would call me, but I just wonder, and I didn't ask her, I might in the future, you know, what is she gonna do with this urn?
Yeah, so that's a good, another thing about cremation is that you can, the family can hang on to the urn and then, and whatever the family would like to do. And then, and then if they would like to inter the urn at a later date at a cemetery, you just call a funeral home there, or families that can do it on their, on their own. They like to do that too. Just call the cemetery and say, Yep, you can bury the urn at a later date there, whatever the, And then there's also families like to order, jewelry and, things like that you can put some of the cremated remains in there that, like a necklace or anything like that. So there's, different touches on where you can put the cremated remains then for like.
Can't you, I know a lady that told me she had a necklace that had some of the remains of her father or someone, or even a ring or something.
Yep, you can do that. Yep. There's all sorts of jewelry.
Drew, I have one question that comes from Zoom.
Sure.
And you might have already been answered. He says, my cremation niche is located in Northumberland Memorial Park. Does the crematory or the funeral home transport the remains to the cemetery, or do they give their remains to a family member to transport to the cemetery?
It's all up to the family.
Yeah, he's down in Philadelphia.
Okay. Yep. It's all up to the family there. If they want to have the urn given straight to the family after the cremation process, and then they can meet the funeral home at the cemetery with the urn, that's fine. Or you can just, after the cremation process is complete, the funeral home could hang on to the urn until the time of the service and the burial, and then we'll just meet the family at the cemetery with the urn, and then we can, help facilitate the graveside. But all up to the family there. If the family wants to take the urn after the cremation and then just bring it to the service or bring it to the cemetery so that they have the urn, say the burial's at a later date there, so they can have their loved one under their care, and then they can also, bring the urn to the cemetery for the burial.
Okay, great.
Yeah. For the body donation?
Well, no, to be cremated. If they die in Philadelphia, but they're buried here.
Gotcha, yeah. So if I'd say in Philadelphia, if you have funeral arrangements through the funeral home here in Selinsgrove, that funeral home would do or in Middleburg, that funeral home would do the initial transfer. And since we're only about 2 hours apart there, we would go down to the funeral home in Philadelphia to receive the loved one and then have the cremation process done here locally.
So he'd have the choice. Oh, okay.
Say that again?
A third option?
Well, there's
Vegetation.
that's an
Okay.
That's a new one for me. Yeah, I've never heard that. Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing, I've been hearing different forms that,
Yeah. I would make sure that you don't just put them in the backyard, because I think that's illegal.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't came across that yet, but I saw something about like human composting and all that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We haven't dealt with that at all, but. Yeah, that's. Oh, definitely.
Okay, I want to, these are great questions, and I appreciate it. I do want to kind of keep things going somewhat, or we'll be here for all afternoon, but would you be available afterwards for questions a little bit here, or do you need to probably get going?
I actually have a service.
Oh, you do?
I have a service right after this, so I do have to keep going, but.
Okay, well,
He had children, but they didn't bother. Now, he has no will or anything. Is there some, family can't pay for it? Who's gonna pay for that when he passes?
Well, if he has no family if there's no one at all who steps up to handle the arrangements, if it's not a family member, if it's a guardian or a personal caregiver, and if no one knew anything, then the coroner, the county coroner, will then come and receive the loved one, and they'll do the cremation and then hang on to the cremated remains at the coroner's office until someone comes to claim the remains. Yeah.
okay. Thank you
All right,
so
you're
much,
very
Drew, for all
welcome.
this.
Thank you,
I
guys.
encourage you later on, reach out to the funeral home.
Yeah.
Or if you
Feel
have a
free.
funeral home, if you have questions, by all means,
Yes,
check
feel
with them
free.
ahead of time.
Feel free to give Hummel Funeral Home or Siebold Funeral Home there in Selinsgrove a call. We can answer any of your questions there. We're more than happy to help. And if you want to, start your process or start pre-planning your process, stop into the funeral home there, and we can help get that process started there for you. All right.
There you go. Thank you so much, Drew. Appreciate it. Okay, these are great questions, and that's why we have this seminar. It's not just for someone to talk, but to ask questions. It is, we've scheduled a break. We're about 15 minutes behind, so how about we do this? We want to try to keep on target. Let's take a 5 to 10 minute break. There's some water and coffee downstairs if you need to use the restroom quick, just to stretch your legs, and then let's come back here. If we can be back here by 11 o'clock, we're close to on target. So appreciate that, and we'll see you in a couple minutes.